the years, we have known Sean Combs by many, many different names. We got Puff Daddy, Sean John, Diddy, Love. Today, he has a new moniker that he can add to that long list of things that we used to call him. Today, he's inmate 37452-054. So I know over the last few days, many people have come out and given their spin. Many people have discussed the salacious details. But today, of course, we're going to go over how we got here, but we're also going to talk about some of the hot takes that I have seen on the internet from both celebrities and our common folks alike, and tell you how crazy it seems that so many people are willing to look the other way or look past what the allegations are in order to defend this man. So stick with me. I think we're going to cover some things that you've already heard, and we might cover some things that you haven't heard yet. So hang out with me. I'm Tasha Pierce, and this is the weekly wrap up. So most of you guys are not going to need this primer, but we know that this situation kind of all started in November 2023 when Cassie Ventura filed a shocking lawsuit against Sean Combs, accusing him of rape, assault, coercion into sexual acts. That case was swiftly, very swiftly, settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, but that first domino had already fallen. That was the first brick being removed in the house that Diddy built falling down. Even after he settled that lawsuit so quickly and knowing what the optics of that is to the public, the general public knows that if you settle a lawsuit the very next day, they've got something that proves the merit of that lawsuit. But instead of just quietly fading away, Diddy continued to double down, saying that he did not lay hands, that the things that Cassie was alleging did not happen in the way that she was alleging them. And of course, you got the pick me guys who are kind of siding with him. But I think people with common sense realize that where there was smoke, there was fire. And just in case you didn't believe Cassie, months later, a video surfaced. Yes, sir, you are a liar. We have video evidence of you doing this. And it kind of forced his hand to where he had to make this half hearted apology and talk about how dark of a place he was in and how he needed therapy after this. So, but you needed therapy. Just imagine how much therapy she needed. But anyway, I digress. At that point, Diddy probably realized his goose was cooked. He probably thought that any trace of the tape that would substantiate what Cassie was saying was long gone. But that just let him know that somebody with a reach further than his was actually looking into this as well. And then came the raids on his properties. Homeland Security raided his homes back in March, and they seized a whole lot of stuff, including the baby oil and the lubricant that we talked about at the top. But amongst those things was also narcotics, were also firearms and tapes that, and by tapes, I mean hard drives, I mean digital evidence that these investigators began to look at as possible evidence of all of these claims against him. Because after Cassie opened the floodgates, when I say people started coming out of the woodwork, people started coming out of the woodwork. So now, all of this evidence was seized in a Homeland Security raid that took place at his homes, both in Florida and in California. They raided his homes because they thought that he might try to destroy evidence. So, coming into the current situation, there was a grand jury that was convened. They turned back an indictment, and Diddy was arrested on September 16th, just a few days after the anniversary of the death of Tupac. Isn't that kind of crazy? How those things kind of happen in the same month? But anyway, well, it seems like this arrest didn't come as a surprise to anyone, Diddy included. And in fact, his attorney said that Diddy came to New York to await his arrest at the Metropolitan Hotel, because he wanted to cooperate with authorities. Now, it was later revealed that the arrest was scheduled for the 17th, but authorities moved in early due to some chatter that they picked up on surrounding Diddy. So, law enforcement reportedly searched his hotel room, found drugs in his hotel room, which is would be strange since he knew he was going to be arrested. Why would you have narcotics or any type of drugs in your hotel room? In the situation, it seems like Diddy thought that he was going to be in control of the entire situation. He went to court the day after his arrest. He was prepared to just buy his way onto home detention. So he offered a package worth $50 million as bond, and that was denied. So he appealed that decision, only to be denied again. So now he's sitting in jail awaiting trial. It's been reported that he's on watch for self harm, though there's no indication that he really wants to end his life. In fact, his attorney says he's prepared to fight these charges. And the charges are pretty damning. So after we hear this clip from the prosecutor involved, we're going to talk about some of the social media chatter that I've been hearing. I'm pretty sure you've been hearing it, and why the narratives around this situation are really pissing me off. But let's listen to this prosecutor real quick.
Hey everyone, my name is Damian Williams, and I'm the U.S. Attorney here in the Southern District of New York. Today I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment, charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution. The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. As alleged in the indictment, to carry out this conduct, Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice.
I believe the mention of arson here is in relation to Kid Cudi's car. So now we know that there are a lot of elements from Cassie Ventura's lawsuit that are entering into this indictment.
Let me say a little bit more about the charges. The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years, and in a variety of ways. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines.
Now, notice the emphasis on commercial sex workers being transported over state lines. That is the crime. Now, the other stuff is criminal, but the crime that they can stick him on is the fact whether this sex worker went from New Jersey to New York, doesn't matter how far. If a commercial sex worker went over state lines with the intention of engaging in commercial sex work in a different state, and the person who facilitated that travel was Diddy, that is a federal crime. That's a federal crime. You would think that they would have learned this from the R. Kelly situation because everybody seems to be very unclear on what he was hit with. But if they have evidence, which, spoiler alert, I believe they do, that commercial sex workers went over state lines to engage in sex acts and was facilitated by Diddy, they got him. It's a damn shame that you got to say this to people who consider themselves in the industry. You would like to think that they would want to know if they were doing something illegal. So yeah, I'm addressing this dumb shit that you're seeing on the screen right now.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them.
And he often electronically recorded them. There's two things about that statement about the freak offs. Thing number one, he didn't mention his freak off to give us all a good laugh. He mentioned the freak off as a kind of dog whistle for other celebrities and or people who were involved in these freak offs. Basically, we know about them. The second thing he said there, it's kind of an aside, is they were electronically recorded. We got two things there. Thing number one, that's another dog whistle for the people who were involved. If you are on a recording at one of these freak offs, it's probably in your best interest to go and holler at the prosecutors in this case and lawyer the hell up, because they know who was there and they know who was engaged. Now, just because you engaged in a freak off, does that mean that you are guilty, or you will stand accused of the same things that Diddy is being accused of? No, I don't think so. Because if you didn't get yourself involved with the commercial sex workers, let's just say it was you and another willing participant, there's nothing wrong with that. You can do all what you want with a willing participant who is not a commercial sex worker, right? I think he threw that in because a lot of these people didn't know they were being recorded. A lot of these people thought that, what happens here stays here. And that's not the case with Diddy, obviously. It's not the case. They've got hard drives. And the second thing is, in the state of California, it is illegal to record someone without their consent, which means that there could be more charges pending just based on the fact that he was recording people without their consent. So if a person who was at one of these parties and was just legitimately freaking off with somebody who wanted to be freaked off with, to know that there is a sex tape out there of you might make you want to come forward and bring your own charges against Diddy. That is a very, very loaded piece of information right there. And I think a lot of people are overlooking the implications there. I guess one of the caveats behind that, though, you could get around it if these people signed over something that gave consent for whatever once they entered his home. Now, that doesn't mean that he would be completely off the hook, because if I signed a non-disclosure agreement and I gave consent, I cannot consent I can't give you permission to commit an illegal act. So for instance, if a 17-year-old girl was at this party, and this is hypothetical, was if a 17-year-old girl was at one of these parties and she signed off saying, "Yeah, I'm giving you consent to do whatever. I'm saying that this is consensual." You can't do that. Um, I couldn't sign consent and then a bunch of people sexually assault me. I can't consent for you to do something criminal. You get what I'm saying?
The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. On one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video and later reported in the media. He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims. And the indictment alleges that he maintained control over the victims in several ways, including by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunities, by monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance. Because of all of this, the indictment alleges that the victims did not believe they could refuse Combs without risking their security or facing more abuse. Now, Combs did not do this all on his own. As I mentioned, Combs has been charged with RICO conspiracy. He used his business and employees of that business and other close associates to get his way. They arranged for victims and commercial sex workers to travel for the freak-offs, and they delivered large quantities of cash to Combs to pay for the commercial sex workers. The indictment also alleges that they helped Combs cover up his crimes. During the March 2016 incident at the LA hotel that I mentioned earlier, a member of the hotel security staff intervened, and Combs attempted to bribe the staff member with a stack of cash to make sure that what happened was kept quiet. And as the indictment alleges, in late 2023, after public allegations were made about Combs' crimes, he and others pressured witnesses and victims to stay silent, including by making phone calls to witnesses and victims and giving them a false narrative of what they had experienced.
Now, he could be referring here to the allegation that Sean Combs called up some of his apparent or alleged victims and told them, what we did was consensual, right? And even though they had a different memory of what happened between them, he continued to try to kind of gaslight them into believing that it was consensual. And of course, Sean Combs should have been aware that his phone was being tapped. So even the fact that you're calling these women, men, whomever, and telling them, this is the story that I need you to tell, that's being recorded. There was also an allegation that a woman texted Sean Combs and said that she was reading the Cassie Ventura lawsuit, and it felt like she was reliving her own sexual trauma. To which, of course, Diddy tried to tell her, no, that's not what happened. You consented. And she said, you would hit me, you would punch me, you would knock me around. And the part that kind of broke my heart was that she said, I am not a rag doll. I am someone's child. That kind of hit me in the feels. And him being a parent and also a parent of daughters, how do you not feel some type of way when somebody remembers you inflicting that level of pain on them, that they had to remind you that they're human? Gosh. But yeah, so he ain't too bright, is he? You don't get to tell people their experience, especially after, we know that you have done some very monstrous things.
As part of this investigation, in March of this year, special agents from HSI executed search warrants at Combs' residences in Miami and Los Angeles. They also executed a warrant for Combs' electronic devices. During those searches, agents seized evidence of the crimes charged in this indictment. They seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 defaced AR-15s and a large capacity drum magazine. They also seized evidence of the freak-offs, electronic devices that contained images and videos of the freak-offs with multiple victims. Here are some of the items that we recovered during the searches. As you can see here, this is a drum magazine, large capacity, and it contains, I believe, 59 rounds. I mentioned as well that we recovered 3 AR-15s. This is a close-up shot of one of the AR-15s, and you can see right here, the serial number has been thoroughly defaced.
I think some people found this little part to be unprecedented. They're showing evidence of, or some of the evidence that was taken from Diddy's homes during the raid. I think that they showed the weapons for one reason and one reason only. It is to show how solid of a case they have against Sean Combs for something. He's getting locked up, if for nothing else, for having these weapons with the serial number defaced. They got him dead to rights on this. So if you were an accomplice in other things, or if you were a victim, to me, this is a statement to those people saying, this is your opportunity because we got him. Now, are you going down with him, or are you going to help us and cooperate with this investigation? And for the victims, it's like, if you were worried that tomorrow he's going to be back on the streets, we have shown you that we are the boss in this situation. I do believe Diddy and his attorney believed they had the upper hand in the situation. They made this $50 million offer for a bond, and it was denied. This was to show Diddy, I don't care how much money you got, you're not buying your way out of this. And it's to show the victims, we dead serious. We got them. So now, if you want your voice to be heard, then you need to come on out. It's to show the people who were at the freak offs, who may have indulged in some lesser crimes at the freak offs. This is for them to say, hey, we got this footage of you. You know he's been taping you. We also have very solid evidence that's going to keep him locked up for a while. Now is your time to cooperate. I think that was the mens rea behind showing these weapons.
Another picture of more ammunition and parts of 2 AR-15s right there. Now, I want to be clear about 2 things. First, this office is determined to investigate and prosecute anyone who engages in sex trafficking, no matter how powerful or wealthy or famous you may be. No one should doubt our commitment on that. A year ago, Sean Combs stood in Times Square and was handed a key to New York City. Today, he's been indicted and will face justice in the Southern District of New York. Second, we are not done. This investigation is ongoing, and I encourage anyone with information about this case to come forward and to do it quickly.
So you heard him. He sounded the alarm. Hey, we got this guy. I'm showing you that we've got enough to keep him locked up for a minute. So if you thought that you were being threatened, or you were afraid to come forward, or you are worried about your reputation, if you've got information that's pertinent to this case, you need to bring your ass forward and do it quickly. expeditiously because the offers are not going to be on the table forever. And guaranteed, some people started to sweat when they heard him say that. And another guarantee is some very high powered attorneys were put on retainer that day. We may or may not, because a big part of me believes that this whole case is going to be played out, that there is no way Diddy wants this to go to trial. But in the event that it does, it will probably be a veritable who's who of witnesses. I mean, it will probably look like the freaking Grammy Awards at the doggone courthouse if this thing goes to trial. But I really believe that the attorneys that Diddy has, they have to be advising him to try and take a plea because it's not looking good for him right now. And now I'm going to tell you about that situation, the social media stuff that pissed me off over this past weekend of doing this research for this video. So one of the things I want to talk about is this graphic, and I don't know if it's going to be on this side. I hope it is. We're going to put our hand up over here. I've seen this graphic on Facebook, and then I saw it on Twitter. It's basically F Diddy. Did you guys see this situation? Videos in the comments. Then you go down to the comments because I am that kind of sucker. I'm going to the comments. And there is a video. And the video is talking about a situation that occurred in Mississippi. In Mississippi, 6 police officers who call themselves the Goon Squad and were known for their willingness to use excessive force attacked 2 black men, Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker, for the crime of staying with a white woman. That call came from one of this white woman's neighbors to one of these 6 officers. And they made it their mission to go over there and teach those young men a lesson. They're going to teach these black men a lesson for being over this white woman's house. So they go to the home. They illegally break in without a warrant. They torture, torment, sexually abuse, and nearly killed these men. And then they attempted to cover it up by planting drugs on these victims and filing false charges against them. And then it was discovered that they were part of a WhatsApp group where they talked about how shitty and effed up they are against people of color. When they get an opportunity, they will beat them to nearly an inch of their life just for shits and giggles. And I was wondering to myself, why hadn't you heard about this? Where the hell were you when this happened? Now, mind you, this happened in January 2023. That's right. We're supposed to forget Diddy's arrest because of this situation. Again, I didn't know about it. But guess what? I'm going to assume that neither did the people who are making these posts. Because if they knew, they probably wouldn't have waited until after these officers were already convicted and already sentenced for their crimes to make it public knowledge. They would have posted about it when it first was reported back in 2023, right? And that's the problem I have with performative outrage. Where were you when it first happened? Did you know about it then? If you knew about it then, why did you wait till now to post about it? And then, why, when you posted about it, do we have to forget what happened to these black women in order to concentrate on what happened to these black men? Now, mind you, black women will march the soles off their shoes when something happens to a black man. In fact, they marched in this situation for these 2 young men. But when it comes time for you all, and I'm talking about the problematic black men, not our normal black men, our normal black people, period. We get caught up in this social media ish where we think that because we're talking about one thing, we can't be pissed about another. I'm pissed off about both of these situations. Neither of these situations should have happened. Both situations are about abuse of power. Got 6 police officers, however, who are going to spend a lot of time in prison because of their abuse of power. You got the Department of Justice breathing down the neck of the department that allowed this shit to go on right now. But Diddy was walking free for many, many decades, even though we had already been at least made aware of by some people that he might not be a great person. Maybe he's a great father. I don't know. He was a very lousy partner to Cassie Ventura. Might be a good businessman, but he also has weapons in his home with the serial number filed off. Who does that? I'm going to tell you who does that. A criminal, a person who is going to use those weapons to do something dirty, and they don't want it to be traced back to them. Can't we multitask? If Diddy did one half of the things that he's accused of doing, and the things that he's accused of doing, some of it just sounds downright crazy. But we also kind of thought it was crazy when it was like he blew up somebody's car, and then we find out he blew up Kid Cudi's car. Or if he's done even half of these things that he's accused of doing, he needs to have a seat. And while we can feel sorry for his children, and while we can empathize with his mom, we do not have to empathize with him. And I'm a person who strongly believes that it's up to you and your conscience whether you separate the art from the artist and still want a Harlem shake. If you still want a Harlem shake, even after learning what Diddy did, you can knock yourself out. But that doesn't let him off the hook. He still needs to serve his time. And the only way that I think a person would want to defend Diddy in this situation is if you see a little bit of you in him. If you see a little bit of your own actions in some of the things that he's been accused of. Look, I know everybody wants to talk about the salacious details, the sex parties, the freak offs. That part can happen to anybody. Anybody could be a nymphomaniac and enjoy having sex. And anybody could be bisexual or trisexual or anything outside of heterosexual. And if you are, I can't knock that. The problem is when the parties that you are engaging with are unwilling or unable to comply. Then we got celebrities who are asking the questions. Well, haven't you been flown out? Well, men have been flying women out since the beginning of time. When did that become illegal? It is only illegal if you fly a woman. They say flew them out. If you flew a woman out to where you are, and that woman gets there and says she does not want to engage in any type of sexual activity with you, and you coerce or force this woman to do that, that's when it becomes illegal. Or if the people that you are flying out for these sexcapades, if they are commercial sex workers and you are flying them out with the intention to engage in commercial sex work, that is illegal. That is some of the stuff that Diddy was accused of. It's not just I'm gonna fly a woman out and we consensually have sex. But it sounds to me like he's got evidence that he kept the evidence of some of this stuff on these hard drives. Trust and believe me. I don't think the prosecutor would have brought those particular charges if they didn't have something to make them stick. This is not to say the prosecution is perfect, but they got something that makes them feel like they can make those charges stick. And the reason why I say that is because they had enough to hold him with the weapons with the serial number filed off. They had enough to hold him there. The reason why that prosecutor chose to show those weapons during that press conference that he had about the Diddy arrest was as a signal to other victims, other witnesses, that hey, even if this man is able to get off on these other charges, these weapons with the serial numbers filed off is enough for us to hold him. You don't have to be afraid of him. You could come out and you could say your piece without worrying about what he's going to do. Because we got him on the weapons charges, even if we don't get him on the rest of the stuff. But if you want to bolster our case for the rest of this stuff, then you come on and add your voice to the long list of people who have been making complaints about Diddy over the years. Another thing, and this is not substantiated, this is just something that I've heard. The police, the task force, that was working on the Tupac Shakur case is now uh, cooperating with the prosecution in New York. This is not substantiated. I haven't heard that one from any place reputable yet. However, if that is the case, this thing could get even that much more ugly for Diddy, if that's the case, because that task force is not going to work with the feds unless they think they can tie all this together. Before I go any further, I'd like to say a very big thank you to my patrons and channel members. You see them flowing across your screen right now. Thank you guys for keeping the lights on around here. If you too would like to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/Tasha Pierce, or you can click that join button right here on this here video. Or maybe you might just want to send me a one-time donation via Super Thanks or Cash App. All of those will be down in the description. Thank you so much. That is a wrap on this week's wrap up. But hey, guys, do me a favor because I'm putting a lot of work into the weekly wrap up and I'm trying to make sure that I get it out to you every week. So if you can do me a favor, if there is anyone that you know that you think will be entertained by my take on this week in entertainment, please share this with them. And if you've not yet done so, please hit the subscribe button. I really want to get to 2,000 subscribers before the end of the year. I know it's a big ask, but please do that for me. Also, make sure that you're dropping comments down in the comment section below because I love to hear what you think about all of these topics. Do the YouTube stuff, hit the like button, turn on your notifications. If you want to support the channel, look in the description. There are a myriad of ways of doing that. And yeah, join me back here next week, Monday, for the next installment of the weekly wrap up. You will not want to miss it. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.